everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this week. We're going to be talking all about the astrology and the astro weather for March 24th through the 31st, 2024. Happy Sunday, everyone. I hope your weekend's going well. We are going to be diving deep into the astro weather for this week and taking a look at this lunar eclipse in the sign of Libra. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below, subscribe to the channel so you're alerted as to when we have new videos coming out. We have all kinds of information on the transits that are taking place that can be very helpful besides this video. And don't forget to like and comment. Give me a thumbs up, especially if you are a first-time subscriber. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know where you're tuning in from and how you guys are faring with these energies. All right, so we got quite a week ahead, guys. By the time you're watching this on Sunday, we are coming into the lunar eclipse. We're feeling the energies, especially over the next 24 hours. I just want to remind everybody that I have for sale on my website my new extended intuitive messages. Get an extra 2 hours of content on insight into the lunar eclipse in Libra and the solar eclipse in Aries. These are brand new. I've never done them before. We are not looking at tarot. We're not looking at astrology. It's my messages for you on both of the eclipses and the 12 rising signs. Check out beyondtheveiltarot.com so you can pick that up. It's on sale for $14.99. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So much stuff taking place this week. Obviously, the big headline is the eclipse. So this is the very first eclipse in 2024. It's kicking off the spring eclipse season, and it'll be the first one before we get to that solar eclipse in Aries. But before we have that kind of feisty new beginning, this one feels like a dramatic ending. So we're gonna see lots of relationship turning points taking place this week. I've heard from so many people leaving comments and shooting me messages letting me know that you guys are already feeling the eclipse fallout. So it's not unusual for some of these things to already be happening. I really recommend taking a look at your chart, see where Libra is. This eclipse will be at 5 degrees of Libra. So a lunar eclipse is a full moon on steroids. Now, when we have a lunar eclipse in Libra, this is bringing up themes of balance, harmony, and relationships. This all comes to the forefront. And during this event, the moon is in Libra and the sun is in Aries. So we see that polarity between the two cardinal signs of air and fire. Well, Libra is a sign that values fairness, balance, justice, and partnership. So when we have this eclipse, it's highlighting the need to find equilibrium in our personal and professional relationships, as well as within ourselves. So with Venus being the ruler, Venus is in Pisces. We're going to be seeing Venus in close proximity to Saturn. This is basically bringing up themes of love and beauty and also responsibility and discipline or structure. So the focus is basically going to be on the balance between our emotional needs and our commitments to other people. We may feel like this is like a karmic turning point where we can no longer maintain certain relationships, but some people will grow stronger together. I don't want you guys to hear Venus, Saturn and kind of shudder. Venus, after all, is in Pisces in her exalted sign. But I do think that this combination brings about a time of reevaluating relationships, both romantic and platonic, to ensure that they're built on solid foundations and have mutual respect. So boundaries are a necessary key to this next week. And this is actually kind of completing a cycle that dates back to the solar eclipse that we had in Aries in the fall of 2023. So you might want to think back to what seeds you were planting back then. Now this is like that big completion and conclusion point. Now, when we really look at some of the other aspects, I think this is also encouraging us to take more of a serious and mature approach to our connections to other people. It may bring up themes of commitment and sometimes compromise. You may feel like it's a time to reassess the dynamics in your relationships and make the necessary adjustments to create more balance and harmony. And also something you guys want to be thinking about is how your relationship, like the role that relationships are playing in your life and if they're aligning with your personal values and your long-term goals. So make sure through the beginning of this week, as we're coming into this energies, to make time to reflect on the importance of self-worth and boundaries and ensure that your relationships are supportive and nurturing. I think Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces does teach us that sometimes it's important to pause, reflect, sleep on it, think about it in private before we come up with a plan or a solution when it comes to Venus related things. So love, money, relationships, right? Balance, all of those themes that kind of come up with Libra. Now, something else we're going to see that's going to be taking place is Mercury is going to really start acting up at the end of this week. As many of you guys know, I told you last week, we're already in the Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. So this is kind of when we start seeing the effects of Mercury turning retrograde. But by the end of the week, we're going to see Mercury is actually stationing. So it's getting ready to retrograde. We'll see that retrograde begin on April 1st. And no, it's not April Fool's. But this is an interesting Mercury retrograde. And, you know, I put the video out on this already, and then I did a little bit of like a deeper dive, and I was looking at some of the other aspects, and something that I noticed that's going to be taking place with this particular transit is that we're going to see Mercury that's going to be coming into conjunction with Eris. So I don't always talk about, you know, some of these other asteroids, but worthy of mentioning, because that does make me feel like it adds a little bit of like an extra bit of spice to this Mercury retrograde. So I wanted to talk about that. And I also noticed that while Mercury is meeting with Eris, it's making oppositions to Zeus. So I feel like this is going to be creating lots of challenges in communications, especially when it comes to who's in power, who's in control. So we might kind of see that there's some power struggles. We all know that Zeus was the king that really kind of presided over all of the other like Olympians. So I could definitely see that as like some issues maybe, and conflicts also in you know, agreements, marital relationships, things like that. So we'll get into that. But Mercury, you know, coming into conjunction with Eris this week before he starts his retrograde. For those of you guys who don't know who Eris is, she's the goddess of discord and strife. Eris is actually seen as a dwarf planet in our solar system, and she is beyond Pluto. So I kind of see her as like a feminine archetype of Pluto, combination maybe between like Pluto and Mars, but a more feminine energy. So seeing Eris and Mercury come into conjunction, I think is indicating a strong connection between the way we think and communicate and the disruptive, transformative energies of Eris. So this can lead to a unique and unconventional approach to expressing our ideas and opinions. But people who have this aspect, or, you know, we might be kind of feeling this in this next week, may be highly intelligent, innovative, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. We're going to find that people are going to be more skilled at using communication to bring about change and inspire other people, but we're going to ruffle a few feathers along the way. Now, when Eris is in the sign of Aries, this is the sign of the warrior, right? Ruled by Mars. And this is where Eris's energy, I think, is very much amplified. So Aries is, you know, obviously bold and it's assertive. And I think in this position, Eris can manifest as a fierce and unrelenting force for change, unafraid to engage in conflict to achieve her goals. Now, people who have this placement may be driven to challenge the established order and fight for their beliefs, often through direct action and confrontation. Now, Eris moves very slowly, okay? She's been moving through Aries forever, so most of the people who are watching this have Eris in Aries. So this Mercury retrograde, I really feel like, both because it's tied to the North Node and also because a lot of us have this placement, we're going to be going back and forth and reassessing and thinking about, like, am I being mean, or am I, you know, standing up for myself? And I think there's a sense of reworking what it means to, you know, be combative versus, you know, being assertive. Now, in mythology, Eris was known as the goddess of discord and strife. She was the sister of Ares, the Greek god of war, and often associated with chaos and disorder. If you guys know the famous myth where Eris was not invited to the wedding, so she throws a golden apple inscribed with the words "to the fairest into the party," causing a dispute between the goddess Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite over who's the most beautiful. This ultimately leads to the Trojan War. Sound familiar? The golden apple, Snow White and the witch, right? It's interesting that we can kind of see like this mythology find its way into like all kinds of like modern day stories. But I think that this is really important because I do feel like with Mercury and Eris kind of combining, there is a sense of messages that are being pumped out there, right, into the media, into the world, that's meant to create more conflict, more strife, and more discord. So we want to be mindful that in the Mercury shadow, a lot of hostility is going to get kicked up, And we want to be selective with, how we're communicating, what information we're reading, where it's coming from, and whether or not it is actually intentional to disrupt our ability to relate to each other, to be diplomatic. Now, if you guys saw my lunar eclipse video in Libra, I talk about the star that the lunar eclipse is happening on, and it literally is about mediation. It's about, being diplomatic, finding a kind of like fair middle ground. But with eclipses, something gets eclipsed out, something that we do not see. And this is a South Node eclipse. So we might feel like keeping the peace is something that is incredibly difficult. But if there's anything that, Aries and Libra teach us, or Mars and Venus, is that all is fair in love and war. So we can definitely see that people are speaking out and saying the things that they need to, especially if it's, protecting the people that they love or standing up for what they love. And certainly with Chiron being in the mix, we feel like that can make us a bit of an outsider. So be mindful of your communication. I think that with Eris kind of in the mix this week, she's definitely going to be a disruptor, and she can be an instigator of conflict. However, I think it also speaks to the idea that discord and strife can lead to change and transformation, as the Trojan War marked the end of the end of an era in Greek mythology. In astrology, Eris represents the need to challenge and disrupt the status quo in order to bring growth and evolution. The question is are you willing to have those conversations with yourself, with other people? Are you willing to sometimes say something that's against the grain because you know that it's your truth and it's what you believe in? Just some food for thought, guys, because we're going to see a lot of contrasts in the skies between a pretty strong stellium in Pisces and also a pretty strong stellium in Aries. So we're going to kind of feel like we're being pulled in two different directions. Now, something else that's worth mentioning, I personally consider Venus to be, besieged. You heard me talk about my Captain Hook reference, where it's like, like Wendy gets captured and, Hook's got her and he's having her walk the plank, and you see like the alligators and all the peril. This is when we see Venus, right, kind of get swallowed up by Saturn and Neptune. So they can both be kind of seen as malefic. And this is all taking place behind the sun. So that does talk about that there can be some difficult things going on, when it comes to relationships, secrets, things that are hidden, things that disappear. And Venus, I think, is in some tricky territory as she's moving between Saturn, the Lord of Karma, boundaries, limitation, and Neptune, which rules things that are invisible, things that are hidden, spiritual realms, but also things that can definitely be a little conspiracy-esque. We can definitely see that with Neptune. I think with Venus moving through here and the connection and the association to the South Node, I see this as a major karmic clearing of the decks, especially when it comes to relationships. There's a lot of relationship stuff that's getting flushed out this week with this eclipse. I will say that this can be a little bit more tricky for those of you guys who are Venus ruled. So my Tauruses and my Libra risings, be mindful of this at this time. Also, I would say for Pisces as well, having Venus, kind of struck between Saturn and Neptune in your sign, you might feel like it's hard to feel the love, and you might be going through a personal period of transformation that you just can't quite see yet. So just hold on, you'll start to see it unfold in the next couple of weeks. Now, Venus being here, some stuff that kind of comes up for me is be very mindful that there can be some challenges going on with water. Obviously, we know Mars is in Pisces as well, so I definitely think that we're going to see themes revolving around flooding and water issues and storms. But anything involving water, right? Health of water, water quality, what kind of water we're consuming, where it's coming from, what's in it. Certainly, I talked in previous videos about Mars and Pisces and that it will materialize, I think, as threats of potential unforeseen attacks on water or on like utilities. But I think that with Venus being here, we can also see that we need to be a little careful with cosmetic changes. Even though Venus is in her exaltation and, she's going to make some positive aspects to placements in Taurus, I'm not crazy about her moving through between these two signs. So, cosmetic changes, manipulation of images, like AI things of women that, are supposed to be somebody and then we realize that it's not. It could also be that, we think we want to, make an investment in something, and then money disappears, or we get scammed or we get catfished. Some of this stuff can definitely happen with Venus being in this placement. And the connection to the South Node in Libra is undoing this sense of being lazy, being indecisive, being people-pleasing. So on the flip side, there can definitely be a sense of people kind of feeling like, you know what, I need to step away from things because it's not working for me, and kind of choosing almost like the easy way out rather than confronting problems, or rather than detaching. We're disassociating. And so that in a way is not really handling it, right? Obviously we got to give, people space if they're going through stuff. I'm not encouraging conflict, but just not responding to people, or just not showing up to something, or not giving a reason and just vanishing, definitely can kind of get us into some trouble, and that in itself can create some relational issues. Now, something else that is associated with Pisces is, anything in regards to the hidden sectors. So I think with Venus moving through this conjunction with Saturn, we're going to hear more about refugee camps, hospital expenses, hospital, issues in general, hidden expenses relating to immigration and relating to, government spending. I think that's a huge thing. I mean, that's been going on this week. We have not really had a lot of understanding or disclosure with this budget bill that's come in. And apparently we were supposed to be hearing it was supposed to kind of like keep us from having a budget crisis. Did not have a 72-hour kind of ruling on this. We didn't get time to really read through the 1,000 pages or so here, and we saw that there was, both parties were kind of in agreement with this spending package bill here in the United States. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go find out, but it's over $1 trillion. It was pretty much, accepted in the early morning hours just recently this week, and then voted to be passed on the same day. $1 trillion of spending, and thousands of pages that we would have to go through. Kind of crazy, especially when you start to break it down and you look at where the money is going and how it's being allocated. That's very Venus, Saturn, and Pisces, and I think that we're not really going to see the true effects of this until Venus starts kind of moving out of this kind of placement. Something else that came up for me also is, because once we have the lunar eclipse in Libra and we feel like there is this huge completion, we're kind of in this like eclipse portal. I always laugh when I say that, but that's what everybody calls it. The 2 weeks in between before we get to the solar eclipse in Aries, when we have that new beginning. So it's kind of like a Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in between this time period where things are flushing out and new things are beginning, and we might feel like we have to kind of pivot or like really, think on our feet. I read this quote this week and I saved it, and I now kind of really resonate looking at some of the aspects, but it read, "The root to procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear." And that really kind of sunk in for me when I was thinking about how, so much of the archetype of Venus, because she has connections to Taurus, which is about indulgence and pleasure and beauty and what feels good, tastes good, smells good. Certainly some of the other effects of Taurus can be slow, can be stubborn, can be lazy, right? Indulgent. And then, Venus's connection to Libra can also be indecisive, unsure, but it also can become codependent, and it can become really attached to the idea of needing somebody to give them kind of the green light before they make a move. So it's interesting to see both Mars, the North Node ruler, and Venus, the South Node ruler, in Pisces. And Pisces can be a sign where we can deal with fear. We've all seen, fish in a pond or koi fish in a pond. And if you're, kind of hovering over the bridge, they might scatter, or, somebody throws like a stone into the pond and they all kind of go into their like little cove, right? That's very Pisces. Pisces is a mutable sign. It represents the two fish that are kind of swimming in opposite directions of one another. It's changeable, right? And it's a feminine sign, so it's sensitive. So it's kind of like bizarro world to see Mars, the ruler of all of this Aries, in Pisces, where it's kind of treading through no man's land. Venus kind of stuck in a conjunction of Saturn, where she feels like it's hard to find the pleasure, or it's hard to find love again, or it's hard to, believe in ourselves. And Pisces can sometimes be about fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the next life, fear of something ending. And Saturn is also seen as an energy like that. Saturn can be seen as like a boundary or like a gateway. And we don't know what's beyond Saturn. At least the traditional, like Hellenistic astrologers, they didn't really look beyond that planet. So they saw Saturn almost kind of like Pluto. Anything beyond that was like, that's where dragons are. Anyway, so I saw that quote and I was like, wow, I think a lot of people are going to be realizing through this Mercury retrograde, what am I not doing that I should be doing? What am I not saying that I should be saying? How can I be moving my body more? How can I be more proactive? How can I be more independent? And as this is happening, it's all feeding off of this Mars in Pisces. So it is possible that some of us have realized that, the real root of our procrastination, what we've been holding back and not doing, I don't think is laziness. I think it's fear. Okay, so to better understand this, to apply this to your own chart, pull up your chart. Let's look at it really quick. Look at where Saturn is in Pisces. Okay, whatever's going on in that house, there is this feeling of, I want to do this, but I don't know how. Or I'm scared, or I feel like it's hard for me to believe that this is possible. I'm afraid to feel into this. I'm afraid to show emotions, right? That's scary. Vulnerability is scary. Not knowing what's next is scary. Ending this chapter is scary. When in reality, when we kind of get with the program and we're willing to move with the energy of the cosmos and we're wrapping stuff up in the midst of these Mars and Venus transits in Pisces, the ending is necessary to better facilitate the beginning. And also the eclipse is teaching us that as well. So my Astro fam, we have to kind of get with the program. Like I said, you have like this really weird double stellium where on one hand we have some really, kind of heavy hitting energies with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, Mars moving through there, feeling like it's kind of losing momentum, it's fizzling out. Venus is kind of feeling like she's trapped. And then we've got exalted Sun, North Node, Chiron, and Mercury in Aries, where it's like, this is gonna hurt, but I'm gonna rip that damn bandage off, or I'm gonna go my own way, even if I have to go it alone. I've been looking at this all week and I'm like, man, this is gonna be like a lot of people's like Jerry Maguire moments where they're gonna be like, who's coming with me? And not know what's next, right? You got to grab your goldfish and whoever, will kind of follow along with you to go and initiate and start your own thing. And even if people don't come with you, screw it, you're still going to do it, right? So don't be afraid to let go this week. That is kind of like the message that comes through these planets in Pisces. And like I said, we're going to break off, or we're going to be, I guess, finding ourselves at a crossroads where we're going to go the Pisces path, but we're going to be like, I'm going to go hide out in bed and put, my covers over my head, like call me when this is over. Or we're going to be more the Aries kind of side, and it's going to be very quick moving, innovative, not afraid to address the wounds, not afraid to, be independent, to stand up, to get active and say, I am going to fix this, or I am going to rework this. So much about the Mercury retrograde is going to be teaching us that we have to start somewhere. So even if you, don't know how you're going to get from point A to point B, the shift with the mind, right? Changing your mind and your mindset, I think is the key to get going with new patterns, to initiate new projects, new relationships, to start new hobbies, to make new friends. After all, Mercury is about communication. So that association with Gemini is getting out, going for a walk, right? Going for a bike ride, getting on our treadmills, walking the dog, being more, active and going out and meeting people and talking to people and not being afraid to kind of communicate with people, even if you don't see eye to eye about things. And then also that association with Virgo, which is about organization, kind of getting on a new schedule, focusing on our health and our well-being. So this is such an amazing time where I feel like, April is not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's really probably going to be, I think, the most challenging month of all of 2024, honestly. But with hard work, the willingness to, try again, we are going to see that we are going to reap massive rewards by the time we're getting to like May and June. So I encourage you guys to be willing to make these changes. Aries is about what we do as soon as we wake up in the morning, right? And so something I've been telling everybody is get up, 20, 30 minutes early, right? Get up, stretch a little bit, do your I am mantras. I am strong, I am bold, I am courageous, I am capable, right? I am loved, whatever you have to do. Obviously, this is like a Mars archetype. So it is about, courage and masculinity and like the willingness to kind of like put on your armor and face the day. And get out there, right? Get outside, get some sunshine, do something where you're moving your body a little bit, write down your goals. If you guys are doing this throughout the month of April, you are going to be amazed with how much more productive, how much better you're feeling, how much more assertive that you are and better organized. Like it's going to be life-changing. Trust me. Circle back here in a month, and once you've done that, let me know how your life's going, because I feel like it's going to be necessary for a lot of people to get out of like that Pisces kind of gunk. All right, so remember, the root of procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear. Let's go ahead and dive into what's going on this week. We're going to start with today, March 24th. Happy Sunday to those of you guys who are Sunday crew. Not too much is going on today. Really, the only thing that we're going to see is that this moon, as we're getting up in the morning in Virgo, is opposing Neptune. Okay, so what happens when the moon is in Virgo? Well, we look at Mercury. And the moon has been overnight kind of in conjunct or quincunx Mercury. So there's been probably some difficulty communicating Saturday going into Sunday. We're already feeling the full moon buildup, because once this moon ingresses into Libra, we will be coming into the lunar eclipse vibes. So when I see the moon in opposition to Neptune, sensitive, difficult time relating emotionally. I mean, both are mutable signs, but Virgo really wants to have an agenda. It wants to get up, clean, get stuff done, focus on health, wellness. It wants to kind of do your to-do list. So my advice is actually get going with that if you guys can early morning on Sunday. So even if you're up before this comes out, and you're already doing that, great, good for you. But do all your errands, run into the grocery store, get things organized, do your food prep, whatever you have to do that the first half of the day as early as physically possible. If you're not already doing that, you can do that while you listen to me. I'll be your companion as you clean and do whatever you got to do. But the moon in opposition to Neptune is basically saying, I can't emotionally relate to what you want to do. I can't, stay in bed and just sleep or wallow. I have to do something. So if you're already starting to feel the effects of like the lunar eclipse coming in, I think with that moon in Virgo, it's basically saying like, hey, what can you do to better support your body, right? What can you do to better support your body? Remember, Mercury is the dispositor. And Mercury has been in conjunction to Chiron. So if you're feeling not so hot physically or emotionally, wonderful time to like get up, stretch, do some yoga, right? Play with the pets, maybe decide that you want to, reassess what you're going to be eating this week. It'd be a great time to come up with a meal plan. It's a great time to kind of get everything situated and ready for the next couple days so you can take it easy over the eclipse. But this is also about health and wellness. Like I personally like to use the moon in Virgo transit to be like, okay, what am I eating this week? What supplements am I taking this week? So that way we can feel better supported. So as these heavier energies kind of roll through with the eclipse, we're not feeling like we have to be scrambling to, go and pick up, dinner, or we feel like we don't have to be scrambling to go and pick up our prescriptions. Like we've already got it handled. So let that moon in Virgo help you with that early this morning. That's really the only thing that's going to be happening. You're not going to see much other than that. The moon will be fairly unaspected other than the opposition to Neptune. Can it be a little difficult to emotionally relate to people? Sure. But like I said, this is where we start feeling like we're going in one of the two camps. So then this moon is going to dip into Libra, and that's going to happen right in the afternoon hours on Sunday. Now, right off the bat, what's nice is that one of the last aspects that the moon is actually going to be making before it comes into the full moon in Libra will be a trine to Pluto. And that's also baked into the lunar eclipse. It's just going to be more exact right before we have it. And so I kind of see this as, an air trine between the moon and Libra, emotionally relating, partnerships, other people, our support systems, people who we can kind of like rely on. And then Pluto in Aquarius, which represents a major transformation when it comes to our friend groups, when it comes to our social life, when it comes to our goals, our networks, our allies. It can be a time where if we are experiencing some personal challenges or relationship challenges, the way out is the trine. So Pluto can be, powerful people who have your back, who are there to support you. It may also mean that as we're coming into this season of change with relationships, our goals are changing in a very significant way. Now, air trines are social, they're intellectual, they're about communication, right? That's the element of air. So it may be bringing up lots of information, lots of news, right? Regarding, legal matters, big relationship news, stuff like that out in the world. Now, the other aspect that the moon is going to make before it comes into the lunar eclipse is right around the same time it's trining Pluto. It is quincunxing Mars. So we almost feel like there is this funky agitation that's coming up, right? Because it's in conjunct. It's agitating something about this moon. And we might feel like, I don't know, just something I can't quite put my finger on, right? Because, that's what Mars in Pisces is. There's this irritation or something that's going on that is just kind of surface level. We might feel that it's just intensity. We might feel that it could also be like sadness because Mars is coming into proximity pretty soon with Saturn. So we might feel like we're trying to hold back or kind of keep the peace. But the peace obviously is difficult, right? Here comes Mercury in conjunction to in conjunction to Eris. I remember saying in my intuitive messages being like, sometimes love is swallowing your pride. So for some of us, we may realize that during, this particular lunar eclipse, it's difficult to communicate with people. It's difficult to relate or to harmonize with others or with relationships or partnerships. But we may also realize that it's not worth just throwing in the towel in certain relationships just because we disagree. A simple, disagreement or conflict does not need to kind of blow up and, materialize or I guess turn into like a situation that's just like an all-out brawl. So sometimes, I think with Mars in Pisces, it teaches us that, we can, through, peaceful kind of disagreement, find our way forward. But I don't know, something about that quincunx makes me feel like it's going to be kind of like subliminally irritating. So the moon's going to keep moving. We will see the full moon come in at 5 degrees of Libra, and that'll be happening, at least here, I'm in the United States, I'm Central Time, very early in the morning on the 25th. So this is going to be Monday morning. Looks like it's coming in like right around 2:45 a.m. Central Time. So it's going to be just, after midnight basically on the Pacific coast, and it's going to be closer to almost 4 a.m. on the East Coast. Adjust your time zones. I know if you guys are in Europe or other parts of the world, it's happening earlier in the day for you. But for most of us over here, we're gonna be able to kind of see it go down because it'll be happening at night. 5 degrees. So if you guys have any personal placements in Libra, I would say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 degrees, sun, moon, rising, or personal planet, you will be having this lunar eclipse full moon on a personal planet. Libra, sun, moon, risings obviously are going to feel this the most, and also we're going to be seeing this being pretty significant for the cardinal signs. So if you are an Aries, Cancer, or Capricorn within those degrees as well, you're going to feel the pinch because of the square or opposition. So especially my Cancers, because you guys are ruled by the moon, I would pay attention to that as well. Okay, so we've got that at 5 degrees. We've got the trine to Pluto. We know that Venus is conjunct Saturn. And it's kind of like, I'm not going to say it's a wash because I think that I'm not going to discredit, Saturn. I think sometimes a Venus-Saturn conjunction can mean that we have to figure out how to find more strength and stability in a relationship. For those of you guys who have been on, kind of like on the rocks with your partnerships, this can be a significant turning point. Especially with this exalted sun in opposition to the moon, but both the dispositor of the sun and the moon are in the 12th house. It means that The conflict that's brewing during this particular eclipse is kind of stemming from hidden forces, as weird as that sounds, other realms, things that are going on behind the scenes, energetic attacks, emotional attacks, spiritual attacks. That's kind of happening. That's kind of creating some issues. So, what is Pisces? Pisces can be prayer. It can be meditation. It can be temple. It can be healing, church, reading scripture. It can also be yoga and meditation and reflection. So I think that if you're experiencing a little bit of tension in a relationship, it may be worth your while to just kind of either have like a safe word where that word comes up and you're like, okay, we're taking 10, or consciously say, you know what, let's just give each other a little bit of time and we will reconvene. We'll circle back, right? That's what we like to say in the corporate world. We'll circle back on this, especially if you feel that tension coming, right? But I don't share the same perspectives I think that a lot of other people do with Venus conjunct Saturn. I think that this can sometimes be this turning point where I've seen many people decide, you know what, that's it, we're moving in together, or, let's get married, or let's sign the business contract, let's just do it. And if there's anything that Pisces teaches us, it's that sometimes we have to be willing to make sacrifices for the things that we love, right? So for the things that we love, that's what I want you guys to think about. Try to be a mediator, try to kind of keep the peace whenever possible. We will see just hours later, the moon is then going to come into in conjunct with Venus and a conjunction to the south node. So until this moon leaves Libra, it's going to be kicking all day long. So it looks like it's going to start in conjuncting Saturn around the early PM hours. It will then conjunct the south node, and that's probably like the ugly crying and the emotional clearing that we're going to have Monday night. That's at a 15, so that's going to be about communication and kind of like assessing what has happened and trying to talk things out, but maybe kind of clearing it out. And then as we get into the late evening hours, the moon will quincunx in conjunct Venus, right? Now in the background, something else that you guys are going to see, and this will be taking place earlier kind of in the day, kind of Sunday and Monday, Venus is coming into a sextile with Jupiter, okay? And they have mutual reception, right? Venus is in a Jupiter-based sign. Jupiter's in a Venusian sign. They're sextiling, so they're helping each other. I kind of feel like with Venus coming into conjunction with Saturn, we're testing the limits when it comes to finances and relationships and our personal values. And then we sextile Jupiter. So it's actually really saying that letting go of something means something better is coming, right? We just have to believe. That's so much about what Jupiter is. But it also might mean that, we feel good, we feel abundant because we can make sacrifices or give selflessly to other people. That's something else. So, some people may really experience true acts of kindness, like total, guardian angel moments where, you're just strapped for making rent or, paying a bill or something, and just poof, somebody's just like, hey, let me help you, or let me give you something, or something of that nature. So I do think that we can see some people who can be particularly generous and giving, but also the universe is giving you the opportunity to say, hey, let's let this go. This may not actually really genuinely be love. It may not genuinely be valuable. It may not actually be good for you in the long run. Why don't we give that up? And in doing so, you have so much more to receive. You're going to get something bigger, better, sweeter, more valuable, more abundant down the road. It's interesting. Like I think about this, like I'm coming up on, at the end of this month, it's going to be about a month. So by the time you guys get to the end of this week, it'll be about a month. No sugar. I haven't been having any sugar. I haven't had any alcohol, and I've had almost no caffeine. And I did this because I'm a Libra rising, and I saw Venus coming into conjunction with Saturn in this eclipse, and I was like, I have to give something up. And so I'm personally seeing the effects of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Venus-Saturn can quite literally mean, creating a boundary with sugar and not having sweets and other things like that. But I've seen the upkick of Jupiter and Uranus. It has definitely made me feel like I'm firing at all cylinders better. I also feel like I have had improved senses. Like I feel like I'm smelling better. I've noticed I haven't had to put on my glasses as much. I've noticed I've had more energy, and it's like it's had a pretty dramatic shift for me. So I don't know if you're somebody who's already on that kick, but yeah, no sugar, no alcohol is definitely like definitely the way to go for me. And I feel like it was worth the sacrifice. Okay, and so some of you guys might be feeling the Venus-Saturn conjunctions as we're watching this, and you're like, what do I need to give up? Go and look at where Saturn is in your chart. For me, it happened to be in my 6th house, so it was something about, dietary stuff. It's making sextiles to my 8th house, so I've just noticed I've just been like on. There's been several times throughout this last week that I'll mention something or I'm thinking about something, and then like poof, it happens, and I'm like, whoa, my spidey senses have been super strong. Certainly Pisces can be about being tapped in, right? And Jupiter Uranus can enhance the senses. It can make us feel more comfortable in our bodies. It can also have a huge shift for our nervous system. So just some food for thought for those of you guys who might want to see how some of those sextiles work in your own chart. Certainly, it won't be like that for everybody, but if you're willing to sacrifice something, you're going to have a lot to gain. And obviously, because the moon's going to come into this conjunction with the South Node on Monday night, expect the feels, guys. The feels are going to be definitely happening, especially with Mars in Pisces. We can definitely see some angry or some ugly crying. Get in water, right? That can be helpful to kind of like lubricate the process because Venus is the ruler. Hot water, hot baths, saunas, soaks, and Libra is an air element. So if you're having a lot of like disruption in the home, there's some conflict, try to find a way to burn some sandalwood. That can help kind of dispel some of that. Chimes, using sound to kind of break up heaviness that can kind of raise the vibration. Doing some breath work exercises, I think that would be really wonderful. Some stretching also can be really helpful with Libra also. And then this is the day that we see Mercury conjunct Eris. For me, that in itself would have been enough to be like, oh boy, there's gonna be some quarrels going on. But when you put everything else together, it's just like there could be that one little tiff that happens on Monday that typically wouldn't be a big deal, but becomes like literally like a war, or some kind of exchange or interaction that could feel like one. All right, so this is going to take us now to Tuesday. I put wicked communication, Mercury conjunct Eris, wicked communication. That seems about right. All right, so we get into Tuesday. We still have the moon in Libra. This full moon continues, guys. All right, we're still feeling it. So even though it's like, okay, the eclipse has happened, oh boy, then the moon in Libra in the morning, it starts coming into an opposition with Chiron. So it can materialize as, somebody is saying something or doing something in partnership to me or outside of me. It doesn't have to be a partner. It doesn't have to be a relationship. It could be somebody at work. It could be a family member. Somebody doing something where, they have a tendency to kind of want to enforce their needs or, tell you what is and isn't fair or, what is and is not working or what sacrifices you need to make, right? Because it's connected to this Venus-Saturn. And it opposes Chiron, so you feel like somebody's kind of like shaking their finger at you, like you're in Sunday school. And then the moon is going to start coming into an opposition with Mercury and Eris. I've personally seen this materialize this week. I've seen, a whole slew of, I think over the last year or so, random, people who have worked for, bigger media companies that have had tiffs and then they were like, see you later. And then they ended up going their own way and doing their own thing. How I've seen it just in this last week is, Candace Owens and the whole situation with her, getting kicked from the Daily Wire. Kind of faintly familiar. Obviously we're in the Mercury shadow. So Mercury can be about journalists and communications. The moon is also about the public opinion. So we can definitely see that the public is having some very strong opinions about, people who are making some rash decisions when it comes to what can and cannot be said on social media platforms and whether that, kind of ignites some kind of like hot or heated social media debate. So I anticipate there's going to be a lot of debate and discussion about some of this stuff coming up as early as, Monday, Tuesday. In your own life, the moon in Libra in opposition to Mercury basically means that there may be somebody outside of you who's trying to relate or trying to partner And, you may feel as if it is really difficult to communicate, especially if you're an Aries rising. And that, somebody is basically trying to, emotionally relate to you and you're like not having it. Not a day for meetings, guys. Not a day for meetings, not a day for being like, oh, we've been off and on. We're finally sitting down and talking about our problems. No, it's going to be hard to be able to kind of find the middle ground because Mercury is about how we think. And when it's in shadow and in Aries, it's like people are super set in their ways. You're almost going to want to give people the month of April to sort through their misbehavings and then, let them figure it out once they've been put in a corner and decide whether or not they're going to play nice. So if people are combative and confrontational, I'd be like, okay, go and do you, whatever you got to do. That's pretty much the only aspect that you're going to be seeing throughout the day. That moon will eventually start to shift. As it does, it's going to in conjunct Neptune in the PM hours, and then it's going to move into Scorpio. So very early on Wednesday, the moon will be moving into Scorpio. And right off the bat, it's going to come into a square with Pluto, which is one of its rulers. Okay, so Pluto is the ruler, as is Mars. Moon square Pluto, it's going to happen early enough that I feel like we're not totally feeling the effects of it. But I do anticipate that the moon going through Scorpio in this period is going to be a little different. Not just because we're going to be seeing oppositions to Jupiter and Uranus, but it's going to be making some trines. So it has like an outlet with all these planets in Pisces. So, okay, moon goes into Scorpio. We are feeling some significant change, transformation. This is where we're kind of going through the rebirth phase. We're out of the full moon energy. So now that the moon has ingressed into Scorpio, that is over. So the lunar eclipse is done, but we are in between eclipses. So for some of you, this moon ingress in the square to Pluto is a continuation of the fallout. And you're like, okay, now this is kind of like how I'm integrating and I'm moving through all of the heavy feels with what has changed. Now, what's nice about this is that we will see that trine to Mars. So we have an outlet for all of those intense emotions. Maybe the outlet is, doing some yoga, Mars and Pisces. Maybe it's doing some laps in a pool. Maybe it's taking a walk by the beach. Maybe it's going and just burning off some steam. These are, water signs. So it does talk about emotions. So when you have Mars, which is much more about drive, trining the moon, we can definitely see with this moon, in Scorpio, where it's not totally happy, that there can definitely be some, I'm going to get revenge, they will pay for this type of energy, especially when it squares Pluto. So you want to just be mindful of that intensity, try to back up off of it if that's kind of your reaction to whatever happened with the eclipse. Let that moon continue to roll, and you'll find that later in the morning and throughout the day on Wednesday, things get a little bit easier. Now, one thing you want to take into consideration is that Wednesday has a lot of Mars energy in the skies. A lot. We've got a moon in Scorpio, traditionally ruled by Mars, trining Mars in Pisces, and in conjunct or quincunx, the Sun and the North Node in Aries. Both of these signs are ruled by Mars, so it does feel like things are heated. That moon is kind of private and, kind of hidden, and it's kind of working through something that might be emotionally festering, and it's not really resonating with the Sun or the North Node. So Wednesday, kind of a tricky day, it's really supposed to be about cutting, removing, emotionally kind of bouncing back from something and taking some time to kind of integrate post this eclipse. Now, yes, moon in Scorpio in conjunct the sun, the energy is very spicy, basically. So that moon's going to keep moving through Scorpio. We will not start to see it pick up and do anything decent until it's coming into a trine with Saturn and Venus. So that will not be happening until Thursday. So when we see the moon continue to go through Scorpio, we wake up Thursday morning on the 28th. Then the moon starts coming into a trine with Saturn. And for me, Thursday is like that acceptance point that's like, okay, like all this shift happened. Like I just have to let it go, right? That's how I read that. It's just time for me to let it go. And then the moon is going to start coming into an opposition with Jupiter and eventually Uranus. So there's like a sweet spot that's like early in the morning that I feel like is easier. Doesn't mean it's easy, it's just easier. And then the moon's going to pick up an opposition to Jupiter midday. So that's more financial, right? Especially because, you know, the connection to Jupiter and Uranus, this sudden jolt or, you know, expansion or things that are kind of changing is very much related to Venus being in between these two planets. Now, recently, if you live in the United States, if you guys heard about what's going on with the Fed, increasing interest rates, apparently, I was listening to a podcast earlier, they were talking about how overnight, it sounds like the National Bank of Switzerland and also the Bank of Mexico, they're all going up in points with their banks, I guess, with their interest, kind of signaling that, yes, that might be the indication. I mean, I'm not in any way, shape, or form an economist, so I can't, you know, speak to that specifically, but I can tell you that it sounded like they had one of two options. It was like they were either going to increase the interest rates or they were going to decrease them, which could actually create bigger problems. So they opted, obviously during an election year, to decrease them, which in theory sounds good, but we may see this manifest in, you know, the weeks and months ahead as increased inflation. So with that being said, I think a lot about how, you know, this moon's going to come into an opposition with Jupiter and Uranus, and it could trigger something in regards to shock and surprise, right? Scorpio, finding out some kind of information that has an impact on the financial markets. And Venus, which is still stuck between Saturn, where something is kind of being behind closed doors or it's hidden, and it's very close to Neptune, so nobody's really able to see what's going on with how we may actually see some of this stuff manifest. We are now less than 1 month away from the April 20th date when Jupiter and Uranus come into conjunction. And I have said for many months that when that conjunction happens, you guys are going to see a number of things happen. The big thing is, I did say, I think we're going to see rise of inflated costs. We're going to see food costs more. We're going to see increased, you know, cost of farming, increased costs of energy. You're going to see all this stuff suddenly just go as we get into the spring. But the other way that I can look at this is that impact that's going to be had is also going to have a ripple effect where it's going to impact property. So like property values, we might see property values increase. I think we're definitely going to see like a market bust when it comes to commercial real estate. I've thought that for some time. And also the banking system. So when all that stuff starts to happen, it does have a trickle-down effect that's going to impact all of us. It's going to impact us as consumers. It's going to impact us as, you know, having jobs. And obviously, you know, Jupiter going into Gemini this year is known for having pretty high unemployment rates throughout history. Every time we see this cycle, that's generally what happens. So I think your guys are about to witness as Venus is getting ready to start coming into Aries in the next month or so and touching with Chiron and the North Node and activating the eclipse. We're going to realize in April, May, like, oh my God, you know, the impact it's going to be having on us. So what am I saying? Be careful with your spending, guys. Be careful with your spending. Be careful with just suddenly, you know, taking a leap of faith and investing into something. Don't invest in things you're not willing to potentially lose, especially with this moon in Scorpio. You know, we know traditionally that when stuff goes through Scorpio, there is something that happens where people kind of wig out and they get really sensitive about what's happening financially. Particularly sensitive this year while the moon is in opposition to Jupiter and Uranus, which represents expansion and then destabilization. Expansion, destabilization, banks, money, resources. I'd be really, really careful on this day because it kind of makes me feel like it's something that could break one way or the other, and it could be quite a dramatic kind of turn. All right, so the positive though is that other than the big financial effects and feeling destabilized, is that we are going to be seeing Venus come into now a sextile with Uranus. So it does represent where, you know, if we are able to be strategic, if we do see what's going on and what's happening behind the scenes, if we do catch on to some of these global kind of patterns with finances and resources and what is shifting out in the world, we can intuitively tap into what changes we need to make. Right? What we need to be shifting about our own spending habits, our own values, our own resources. Now, obviously, this also can materialize as the fact that there is some inside stuff going on. I just saw recently, it was like Nancy Pelosi invested into some AI tech. She put $5 million into it, and it come to find out it's like it's a private company, so you can't invest in it. Makes me think of, Venus really close to Saturn, right? A woman investing in, within politics, having insight in things in regards to some big kind of growth period that's going to be happening with the markets and technology, right? And, it's hard for me not to see that stuff. So I think we might be hearing more about people who are investing, who are known, that are investing in stuff that's private before it ends up having a big boom. So I'm anticipating seeing something else like this later this week. What else? So Venus sextile Uranus, it does mean that, we can, through our insights, have the opportunity to have a little bit of foresight and be able to make the necessary changes that we want. This is at a 20. This is at a 20. These are Scorpio degrees. The moon is going to hit a 20. Does not make me feel so optimistic. So I'll have to circle back around and see what it ultimately ends up happening. That's going to happen after the markets close, by the way. So this will all be taking place after market hours on Thursday. But I wonder if there's going to be some news that's going to kind of spark something. All right. So then this is going to take the moon into a trine with Venus. Okay. So that's nice. At least we've got the moon that's kind of aspecting a planet that can make us feel like we are feeling again, healing again, sensitive, emotional, receptive. So that's one of the more positive aspects that we're going to see with the moon. And then it's going to keep moving forward. This is going to take us into Friday the 29th. And on Friday, that moon is still in Scorpio. I keep looking at that Pisces stellium. It's still in Scorpio. And it's starting to come into a trine with Neptune. So you'll kind of catch that later in the morning. Once again, releasing, dissolving, letting go, feeling tapped in. We're a little bit more sensitive than usual. And I think it'll be nice to get this moon out of Scorpio because, we need something that's supporting all of this Aries so we feel like we can kind of get things moving again. So we will eventually see that trine to Neptune. And this is on Friday. And that looks like that's going to happen kind of like mid-morning. And then the moon's going to ingress into Sagittarius in the later afternoon. So a little bit easier. We will catch a snag with some squares, obviously, to Pisces, but having the moon in Sag really coming into strong aspect with the sun in the North Node, I think is a little bit easier. It's a little bit more optimistic. The energy feels a little bit lighter. So second half of Friday, I think, is probably a little bit easier. And that moon is going to keep moving. And it looks like in the PM hours, it'll catch that square to Mars. So just be mindful Friday night, if you're trying to travel, visibility issues, storms, delays, that can be something that's happening. I think we might hear about some stuff over the weekend about more issues with airplanes, especially because Mercury is going to be stationing. Sag deals with airplanes and, air travel, international travel, and all of these squares make me feel like there could definitely be some disruptions when it comes to that stuff. Now, the other thing you want to know is that when we see, the moon in Sagittarius, which is about our belief system, it's about culture, it's about philosophy, moon coming into a square with Mars does make me feel like there's going to be some kind of confusion or conflict over these topics. So over religion, over beliefs, we're feeling a little agitated and we're feeling like we're being pressured about something. So I think we're going to see lots of discussions and kind of heated debates about, things that are going on with, religious conflicts and stuff that's happening between, different countries and, people kind of talking about and debating all of this stuff more than usual. And then the moon is going to keep moving through Sag and it's going to pick up a trine to the sun. And that looks like that's going to happen in the PM hours, so Saturday night. Not bad. And then it'll square Saturn, in the very early morning hours of the the 31st on Sunday. So actually, like, Saturday night's not all that bad. Saturday night's probably a better time to be going out and doing things, to be honest with you. So I like that a little bit more than Friday. All right, so what else are we going to see here? So the moon will then continue to move through Sag. And that's taking us now into the square with Saturn. So it looks like that's going to happen later in the evening. It'll come out of the square, and then it's going to square Venus in the morning. So now this takes us to Sunday the 31st. And I guess it is worthy of mentioning, you know, while the moon's going through Sag, it is trining the North Node. Okay, so that's about the direction and where we're going. And fire trines produce action, movement, you know, kind of doing things, being more adventurous. And it will trine Chiron. So it can mean that it's a really good time to be like learning, doing self-help, awareness, things like that, you know, feeling like we are learning how to become more independent, more productive. And Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So, you know, the moon will quincunx Jupiter, but we're definitely feeling that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I don't know what orbs you guys use. Let me know. I usually work within about like 2 to 4 max. You know, I really like to use 0 to 2 degree orb. But at this point, you know, Jupiter takes another step forward and it hits 17. So if you work with, you know, anything around 3 or 4 degrees, it's now coming into conjunction. So we might feel this a little bit more than we have previously. All right, so now we're on Sunday morning, the 31st. We have a bit of like a wonky morning. So you can look at this 2 different ways. You can look at this from the perspective of the moon's in Sag squaring, you know, Venus and Neptune. So there can definitely be feelings of not feeling like people are understanding us or where we're coming from. We can be feeling like, you know, we are being kind of shut out or, ignored for some of our beliefs. When Venus comes into conjunction with Neptune and Pisces, it's going to be for some people like wildly creative and beautiful and very whimsical and like energetic in a sense of like creativity. It can be very romantic as well. But I feel like with the moon coming into the square, it's not going to feel like that. It's going to feel like it's hard to relate to other people and like share the same perspective. Like always with, you know, Sagittarius and Pisces squares, we always see the topic of religion, culture, you know, where we come from, what we believe in. And like squares are clashing energies. So we're going to hear this ramping up of like, you know, people wanting to talk about Israel, people wanting to talk about Palestine, people wanting to talk about race, people wanting to talk about culture. And you're just going to see this, you know, back and forth. And it's like, I'm Switzerland. I stay neutral in this because I recognize that when you really look at the bigger picture, a lot of what is being pumped out and put into the media is intentional to create this, you know, kind of divisiveness that we're seeing in the world. And equally, you're seeing a lot of people who are speaking, you know, very honestly from their perspective of their culture, where they come from, what they've experienced, what their ancestors have experienced. I'm very sensitive to that. Especially because all of this stuff is squaring Saturn. It's not like you're just seeing people who are just saying stuff to say stuff. You're seeing people who are saying things because they're like, my grandfather came from this country, or my grandmother, you know, endured this genocide. And like, there's a lot of truth to some of the stuff that's coming out right now. But the problem is that you're seeing people who don't want to see each other's perspectives. So what do? They're going to fight, right? And so it's interesting because trines are Jupiterian energies. Like when we see the moon in Libra trine Pluto, yeah, you're going to hear some astrologers say to you, you know, during the lunar eclipse, it's powerful, right? And it's really magical because it's 5 signs away from Libra and it's about your heart's desire. When in reality, Pluto blows shit up, right? Literally just says, we're going to, you know, this is the end. There is nothing beyond this. So it can have this like, you know, finale kind of feeling. It's just like, okay, that's totaled, we're moving on. So, you know, trines can be a lot of energy flooding in at one time. Air trines might be more information, communication, telling somebody it's done. Fire trines are like, here, you know, I'm going to pass you the match. We're going to burn the bridge. So with this moon that's coming into a trine with Mercury and Eris, I think that we can see that there are some people who are going a step further than just being hostile with words. we may see people who are actually saying like, no, I will follow up with these threats, you know, especially because Moon's going to square Neptune. It might feel a little Looney Tunes. So we can definitely see some kind of like pressure and tension revolving around some of these topics, unfortunately. And like I said, you know, now as we're coming into the 31st, we are getting ready to see Mercury station. So Mercury is super slow. It will retrograde actually on Monday the 1st, starting at 27 degrees. The retrograde is going to go through most of April. We're feeling the shadow until May. That's how long it's going to take. And Mercury is going to retrograde back over Eris, right? And so we do see lots of terrorist type of stuff with this. We can see cyber attacks with this because Mercury is systems, Aries is dealing with war. We could feel like there's something kind of going on here with this Mars dispositor, which is kind of behind the scenes, pulling all the strings. It's just, yeah, it's a mess, to be honest with you, because the energy is very conflicting. You know, having two stelliums that are going on in two completely different signs. We have Aries, which is the beginning, and Pisces, which is the end. It's interesting that you're hearing a lot of people going, it's the beginning of the end, you know, it's the end of the world. Whether or not you believe in that, you know, that's neither here nor there. But yes, things have to actually end before we can start new beginnings. That's kind of how it works, right? We have to actually complete one chapter before we move on to the next. So in this sense, it's like, man, you know, this ending isn't going down without a fight. You know, Saturn is saying we want to delay this as long as we possibly can. We're holding on. We're kind of white knuckling things. And Mars and Saturn is where there is enforcing some kind of, slowdown, because I see Saturn and Mars as like a stop sign or a speed bump. It's enforcing this because it doesn't want people to kind of see what's going on. But something's going to happen with this Mercury retrograde. You know, it's already happening. People are waking up. They're like, what's going on? There's some weird stuff happening in the world. You know, why are we starting to see some of the things that we're seeing? Why is this stuff kind of going on financially? What is going on in terms of, you know, border security? You know, you're hearing that because Saturn represents boundaries, borders. Saturn also represents government and people who are supposed to be in charge. So when you see Mars coming into conjunction with Saturn, you're going to see some people saying, well, we want to intervene. And you're going to hear, no, you can't, we can't, you know, you can't pass this line. We can't get involved. And this is where I said to you guys, it's not laziness, it's fear. We're dealing with fear. And we have to be willing to kind of look at all of these hidden things, right? Pisces represents what we can't see. It also can represent self-undoing when we think of the later degrees of the 12th house. So whether it's the late degrees of Pisces, the third decan, or the last 10 degrees of your 12th house, that represents where there is self-undoing that's keeping us from this next thing. So I want you guys to really look at what you're afraid to tackle in the Pisces area of your life, what you're afraid to kind of move through, where you're kind of, you know, struggling through the cosmic sludge and you're feeling like you're just losing momentum, you're tired. It's understandable. So much about April, I think, is going to be about the integration. We've got this Pisces energy, which is super vibey. Some of you guys are really going to like it. I could see some people in creative industries, in film and media and art that are going to say, wow, I just really feel like I'm getting a lot of work done. Great. I love that. If you can use this in a positive way, more power to you. But there's also this other side of this Pisces stellium that is downright crazy, desperate, sad, feeling lost, losing momentum, right? Mars, Saturn. And then there's the Aries stuff, and this is more active, fierce, dynamic. So this is where you guys get to that turning point after this eclipse where you get to decide which one is it going to be. You know, am I willing to actually wrap this stuff up so I get the show on the road and initiate this new thing? I hope so. And guess what? It's not a race, right? We have to take all of the month of April to really kind of integrate that. Ask yourself, are you a hero or are you a victim? That's going to be a really important thing to kind of meditate on this week because we're going to be kind of resonating with one of these two. And hopefully you can be the hero of your own storyline this Aries season. If you're feeling rejected or villainized for standing up for yourself, keep going. Generally, if you're, upsetting somebody, you're probably doing something right. And that's what happens when relationships change. The dynamic changes with other people. when you become more in alignment with yourself, you start seeing that there is sometimes friction with relationships. And that doesn't mean we have to cut those relationships off. It means that we have to learn to integrate these new aspects of ourselves and reassess the boundaries with other people. And generally, people don't like it when the rules of the game change, right? Or that dynamic in that relationship changes. If you're so used to being a yes person and so used to supporting other people or so used to just being there all the time, that when you start to kind of fill your own cup and you're not always readily available and you start kind of saying no or not yet or I'll get back to you, people can get a little iffy. Try not to be frozen in fear. That's something else that I think about with Saturn being in Pisces, where you're just like, oh my God, what do I do? I can't do anything, right? This fear is an illusion. Mars, Saturn, and Pisces, that's an illusion. You can't let that hold you back. And basically, like, it's time to get it together, baby. You know, we're coming into the last quarter moon. You will see when the moon goes into Capricorn the beginning of next week, preparing us for what we kind of need to wrap up before we get to the solar eclipse in Aries on the 8th, okay? That's all that I have for you guys this week. I hope that's helpful. Thank you guys for letting me stand in my soapbox and give you my sermon. There's so much content on my channel for you to help you guys through these trying times. We've got April horoscopes that are out. They're 5 hours long. It's like 20 minutes per sign. I go through a lot of this for the 12 rising signs. Check that out. It's helpful. We have the Lunar Eclipse in Libra video that is out. We have the Solar Eclipse in Aries video that is out, and Mercury retrograde. So if you want more in depth with some of this stuff, you're like, what does it mean? How is it going to play out in the world? How is it going to affect me? Check out those other videos. Sometimes they pop up all around me, so you'll be able to watch one of them. And if you guys want to support my work, well, the best thing you guys can do is subscribe to my channel. That is the best compliment you can give me. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I get a kick out of reading your guys' comments. You guys can also follow me on X. You can find me on X. I think it's BTV Astro. I'm on there, always posting stuff. And you guys can also consider supporting me by picking up an astro calendar, a report, or booking a reading. You guys can also check out my courses. I teach tarot and astrology as well. Study at your own pace, and it's all beginners and level 2. For all that information, check out beyondtheveiledtarot.com. Until next time, I'll catch you guys back here on Tuesday. Happy eclipsing, and I'll see you then. Take care.